locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rebelpreneur Radio, the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. You know, part of building a successful business today is learning how to develop the mental toughness, how to be a leader, how to knock down obstacles and complete successful missions. And today's guest is a leadership expert who is going to inspire you to become a better version of yourself so that you can start doing all of those things to be successful in your life and in your business starting right now. I'm here today with Matt Cubbler. He is a U.S. Army Desert Storm veteran. He's a career law enforcement officer, former U.S. Federal Air Marshal after 9/11, and a loving husband and devoted father. Matt is the co-founder of Maxout Strength Systems, and he is an inspirational speaker and the author of A Brother's Love, a Memoir. Matt, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
I'm super excited to be on. Thank you for having me.
Well, you definitely have the leadership expertise and the experience. You've been in some tough situations, and can't wait to dig into what you're doing now as an inspirational speaker and all the other things you've got going on. But first, tell us a little bit more about how you got started in the military and in law enforcement and the other sorts of activities that you've been involved with. What motivated you in that direction?
Oh, that's a good question. It started early for me, growing up in, lower income and living in public housing and single mom and a brother who had learning disabilities. He was autistic. I always was interested in helping people. Like every day of my life I spent helping my brother and making sure he was protected. Even though he was older, I was pretty much the older brother because of his emotional capacity. And just dealing with that type of an environment my whole life just sort of prepared me to a life of service. And when I was in high school, I actually had an appointment to the United States Coast Guard Academy. And rather than do that, to be honest with you, I did it to piss off my dad. I enlisted in the Army. Not necessarily the smartest choice. I never ended up going to college. So it kind of, I'm not saying that my future would have been any different, but it certainly might have been a little easier had I taken the Coast Guard Academy route. But so enlisting in the Army was kind of a rebellious, I'm 18, I can do what I want kind of moment that I had. But I truly enjoyed the Army. Don't get me wrong. I loved every bit of it. The 4 years I was Army intelligence, lived in Germany for 3 years. The hardest part was a month before I left for the Army. My brother was killed in a car accident. So that was it was tough to leave home and sort of regroup and get my mind right to go into the military. And to be honest with you, I probably went in completely unprepared because I was just a mental wreck. My brother died in July. I went in August in the Army. So it was a pretty quick turnaround for me. But it forced me to refocus and sort of take my mind off the fact that I'd lost my best friend. So, but that's how it all started for me.
So you spent some time in the Army. You're a Desert Storm veteran. And after that, you went into law enforcement, still continuing in that tradition of service. What got you interested in law enforcement?
Well, when I was younger, as I mentioned, my mom was a single mom. My dad left when I was 9 months old. She actually dated a police officer for a little while. And I just remember when I was 6, he let me sit in the front seat of his police car and put on his hat. And that just was always, one of the coolest things as a kid, having, your mom's boyfriend be a cop. And then when I got a little bit older, and before I went in the Army, I got myself in some trouble. And a police officer arrested me and gave me an option to go into juvie or spend some time with him every day after school. And so I chose him, and he became my mentor. So becoming a cop was kind of what I always wanted to do, just because of the influence he had in my life and the things that he did for me as far as mentoring and molding me. And the military was also part of him too. He was a Marine. So that's kind of how I formulated my path, was as a result of that interaction with him. And, for me, it was an easy transition out of the military. It's hard to transition sometimes when you get out of the military into the regular world. And my original goal was to get out and go to college. And then the closer it came to where I was going to have to go to college, I realized that I really couldn't see myself at 22 going back to college with a bunch of 18-year-olds after I'd been to a war and seen all the things I've seen. I just didn't think I'd have anything in common. And I always wanted to be a cop anyways, but I thought I would get a degree first, but it just never worked out that way. And I got hired as a cop a couple of months after I got out of the Army. And it's been 25 years still to this day. I'm still employed as a cop full time. I've had many different roles. I was patrol and narcotics and SWAT for 12 years. And I was a SWAT instructor and firearms instructor and hostage rescue instructor and all that kind of stuff. And then 9/11 happened, and well, you know how that went. I ended up becoming an air marshal. So,
yeah, tell us about 9/11 and how that led you into the US Federal Air Marshal service.
Yeah, that's a strange story for me, and how it came about for me. We had just done a SWAT drug search warrant where we were activated to go hit a house where there was a lot of bad guys with guns, and we hit the house that morning early, and I was in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock, and in the morning. And I went to bed, and this was before I didn't really have a cell phone. Well, I had a cell phone, but it was the old style. We didn't have text messages back then, and my house phone just kept ringing. And finally, I answered it, and it was my best friend, who's also a police officer, and he said, "Turn on your TV. Someone just flew a plane into the World Trade Center." And my response was, "If they didn't fly a plane into my house, don't call me again, because I'm tired. I want to sleep. I've been up all night." And then it just kept coming to phone calls. Finally, I woke up, turned the TV on, saw what happened, and then immediately I got angry. Because at first I just thought it was a plane that flew into a building that, flew too low or whatever the case might be. But once I found out it was terrorism, the juices started flowing again, and my anger and patriotism rose up. And on September 12th, President Bush came on the news and said he was reactivating the Sky Marshal program, which had dwindled down to 33 in the whole country. And he was going to revamp it. So they were opening up applications, and so I applied, and there were 900,000 people that applied, and they took about 4,000 or so. I mean, the number's classified, the exact number, but it's roughly about 4,000 that they took. And I'm very honored that I was one of those 4,000. But it was a tough job. It wasn't an easy job.
Yeah. So there's a tradition there of leadership, of getting into difficult situations and learning how to overcome them. And now the end result of that is that you are, among other things, an inspirational speaker. Tell us a little bit more about what you do as an inspirational speaker, and who are you helping with your programs?
Yeah, that's everything in my life. I've learned, once you write a book, especially when you write a memoir about your life story, you have a chance to go back and relive everything and see how the dots connect, and see how moments in your life were not just simply moments, that there were a sequence of events that all tie together. And, same thing with everything else I've done in my life. Everything sort of leads into the other thing. And in 2009, I started a company called Maxout with my business partner, and it's a fitness-based business where we own a piece of patented equipment that does something to the body strength-wise that no one else in the world can do. And we started a business during a recession. Don't highly recommend that one ever again. But it was an opportunity that we couldn't pass up, because the inventor of the original Maxout equipment was the business was going bankrupt. So we sort of got it at a steal, and we rebranded it, redeveloped it, and brought it up to Pennsylvania from Florida. And when I started training people, especially kids, I realized that not only was I their strength coach and somebody that was helping them perform at a higher level physically in their sport, but I was kind of like their shrink. And I've always mentored kids as a cop. I was sort of doing it because of what happened with me, that I thought that was kind of my responsibility to do it for someone else. But it was kind of within the role of criminal justice. It wasn't necessarily independent from that. And when I got into Maxout and doing what I was doing, I realized that there's a huge need for kids to learn to not only how to become stronger on the court or on the field, but also how to be mentally stronger and develop leadership characteristics that were currently not being taught to them. So I started a program at Maxout where I was doing leadership development, and I was doing fantastic. I had a lot of really great success stories. But then I started to feel weird because I was only able to help those that could afford to come to my facility. And to me, that seemed very short-sighted and selfish. So I started going out pro bono into schools and doing leadership development classes, and from as young as 6th grade all the way up through high school. And I was just volunteering my time, and I did that for about 5 years. And then I realized that in order for me to really be successful at doing that, time was becoming very valuable to me, and it was a commodity I didn't have a lot of. And in order for me to allocate the time that I felt was required to do it right, I couldn't keep doing it for free, because I was taking time away from things that were paying me to do things for free, and it just was getting too much. So I decided, after a lot of soul searching, because I had a very difficult time really making that decision, to be honest with you, because I really enjoy just helping people altruistically, not needing them to pay me to do it. But then, I did realize that time was just something I couldn't capture in the way that I needed to in order to do it right. So I started my company, I Got You Public Speaking, and began, that's how it all started. And I Got You has significance in that it's been my entire life that, anybody needed me, I had them. And so that's kind of my mantra, that if you just every day say, I got you to somebody and mean it, their life's going to be better.
Hey, I love that. I got you. I like that. Very cool. Well, and you have learned as I have learned as well in nonprofit work and anything that's trying to add value to people's lives. No money, no mission. There's got to be a financial component there, and it's okay to make money while you're making a difference, but it's kind of hard to make the impact that you want to make if you can't pay your bills. And so there's got to be that balance there. And it sounds like you've found a way to address that. And I think also the big takeaway from your experience is, if people can learn these lessons, these leadership lessons, and these what I call resiliency or mental toughness, if they can learn that as kids, they will not have near the amount of problems that they have as adults, especially as business owners trying to go out there and make a success of themselves in the world. So you're actually laying a great foundation for the next generation.
That's kind of, as I kind of knew that going in, like that was my goal, but I didn't know whether or not I was actually going to be able to have the impact that I was having. But over the last 5 or 6 years, I've realized that the problems that our country is facing is generational in that, the things that we're teaching our kids or how we're handling our kids at home as parents. I as a police officer, I as a common citizen, I don't have control over what's going on in somebody's home. I know that 180 days a year and about 7 hours a day, teachers have control of our kids. And I realized that if I could get access to the kids in an environment where I can have control, which is the school, and have the school district buy into the messaging and the methodology by which I develop leaders, that we can change an entire generation. And creating leadership where it's devoid. I go into every classroom every year, and I ask the same question: how many people have had lessons on anti-bullying or anything like that? And everybody raises their hand. And then I ask anybody how many had specific lessons on how to become a leader, and it's crickets. You get nothing. And I'm a firm believer that strong, courageous, honorable, loyal, self-confident kids make bullying impossible. There is the answer to the bullying epidemic is create more leaders. no one's attacking it from that angle. Everybody's attacking it from a symptom type angle. And with what I do at Maxout, I work with neurological and neuromuscular clients as well as able-bodied. And I always have to solve the problem of why is this happening inside their body, whether it's a stroke client or an MS client or cerebral palsy or paralysis. I have to figure out why is their leg not working, or why are their arms not working, or why can't they close their hand, and try to find the root cause of that. Because if I just treat the symptom of their hand not closing, I'm never going to solve the problem. So when it comes to the mind and understanding how to develop leadership through human behavior tendencies and body language, and finding what their strengths and weaknesses are, and developing those core principles in a kid at an age when they're able to understand it in a way that they can comprehend and then go out and use it, will create stronger, more confident, more empathetic, more compassionate, more civic-minded kids who are no longer potential victims. They're the ones that are protecting those that don't quite have that yet.
I love that.
And I think that's the key.
That's exactly, you're exactly right. Everyone else is approaching this problem from a reactionary standpoint, and they're hacking at the leaves, but they're not going to the root cause. So I like that approach, and I think that's different. I don't think I've ever heard anyone approach it from that standpoint, but I agree 100%. What could someone listening right now, what could they do to begin to develop this leadership mentality and the mental toughness and the ability to go out, whatever their job is, or if it's a career or if it's a business they're trying to build? How do you take someone from where they are to where they want to be?
That's a fantastic question. One of the hardest things to do is to gain the trust of another human being. I have trust issues myself, just by nature with what I do in law enforcement. I'm always looking at it from you must be lying to me angle. And so, it can be difficult at times for me to accept people as being genuine. Luckily, I also am an expert in human behavior and body language, so I can kind of read people and decide whether or not they're trying to manipulate me or not. But for me, what I try to do for whether it's in my mentoring program or whether it's coaching adults is I try to start with the basic principle of who are you and what are your strengths. I always had, I'm sure you did too, growing up, practice makes perfect. If you work hard, it'll happen. And if you're not good at something, try harder. And some of that is true to an extent, in that if you aren't trying hard at something, you're never really going to know if you're good or not good at it. But instinctually, there's certain things that we're inherently good at and inherently not so good at. And one of the biggest problems I see in the corporate world is that people are miscast in roles that they're not meant to be in. And getting people to identify where they're actually destined for success through understanding what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and then accepting both of them as fact, and then beginning to piece out from the micro level. I talk to people a lot, and I say, okay, what are your strengths? And they'll say leadership or compassion, or they use big, broad umbrella terms. And I want them to get down to the micro. Like, what is the one thing that you say I can do amazingly well? And it's really cool with kids, because if you have some kid, I'm in a 7th grade class, and I say, raise your hand, what are you good at? And they raise their hand, someone will say, I'm good at baseball. Okay, well, baseball has 9 positions and multiple functions in each one of those positions. And then you have to look at the offense on batting, and, somebody throwing 7 or 8 different kinds of pitches at you. Are you batting left-handed or right-handed? Like, there's so many variables in baseball. And I said, okay, you can't be great at everything in baseball, so let's narrow it down. And when you finally narrow it down that they're great at pitching fastballs, and that's what they're good at. And then you get them to think about that's how small you have to think when you're trying to determine what you're good at. And I get kids who say they're great at playing an instrument. And I have them think then, okay, what do you have to do in order to play good music so someone appreciates it? Your brain's like a CPU. You can take abstract notes on a piece of paper that I can't read or understand and make it sound like something that's pleasurable to my ears. And you have to do that instantaneously at a tempo and beat that is required, that you don't dictate. It's the song dictates that. And you have to be able to process that and make it happen. So the brain's like a CPU. And I tell a kid, if they can take an abstract piece of paper and turn it into music, they're probably good at things like analytics, mathematics, such as, trigonometry or calculus or geometry or algebra, because they can take non-tangible and make it tangible. And if you get a kid to realize that, then all of a sudden they're like, maybe I am pretty good at math. I never even noticed that. And they really start to think about different ways they can use that little piece of information they didn't think about to better themselves. And I do the same thing with adults. Adults are harder because we have so many walls that we build up, and getting somebody to trust and getting somebody to really look inward is the key. And once you do that, then once you have somebody moving in a direction of success, then teaching them how to be a leader is a lot easier. Teaching somebody who's failing every day to be a leader is almost impossible. You can't lead until you figure out first how you are able to be successful yourself. And then you go and you teach that next person how to do the same thing by repeating the process you went through. Because it's not rocket science. It's not voodoo. It's not magic. It's actually pretty systematic in how it's done. But it's a matter of first gaining trust from somebody who's helping you get through it yourself.
I like what you said about identifying the strengths and the weaknesses and owning both of them. And I think a lot of people, a lot of businesses make the same mistake. And I tend to relate things back and forth between personal development and business and marketing, because we humans tend to make the same mistakes in many different areas of their life. A business, for example, or in their marketing, they think everybody is their customer and they want to have something to sell to everybody. When what you need to do is niche down. You can't be everything to everybody, but you can be something to somebody. So you niche down, you figure out what business you're in, and then that's what you focus on, and everything else you're not in that business. And what you're saying is it's the same thing with our personal and our professional development, is find out where our strengths are, focus on building those, and niche down from the abstract and the big umbrella term all the way down to the very specific and niched level of strength, and focus on that, and don't try to be everything to everybody.
No, I agree. And I had to learn that in my business with the fitness business. It's very difficult to start a business that's never been done before. We have a once a week workout program. No one's ever done that. And, everybody looked at us like we had 7 heads, and we're saying, you only have to lift 1 day a week and we're going to give you 20% strength increases. They're like, yeah, right. And then trying to figure out how to market that and then who to market it to. And it's a lot of trial and error. But you had to, I had to force myself to not accept, okay, right now I have 10 adults that like it, but ultimately what my business is geared towards is youth, because the market says that as a parent, and I do the same thing with my kids, I will spend $10,000 on my kids' sports and athletics to help them be successful, but I won't spend 5 cents on me to get healthy. I just won't. But I know that a parent will help their kid. And if you can prove to that parent that what you're doing is working, then you're going to have a repetitive business that allows it to grow. And that's kind of what we've done. And ultimately everything I do in my life is based on results. Everything I do is based on, don't let me tell you, let me show you. And I prefer to live my life that way, because as I'm getting into this public speaking business, and there's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of copycats. There's a lot of people that are selling something that doesn't really have a deliverable, I'm noticing. And I'm just trying to find my niche and where I fit in, and where my authenticity and my story and my experience fits in, so that I am paving my own path and not copying anybody else's. Because I refuse to be an also guy. And if there isn't a path for me, then I'll change. I'll move. But I'm pretty sure I can create my own path, because I've done it every day of my life since I was a kid. So it's just, for me, I know every ounce of who I am. And I refuse to allow someone who thinks that they can help me make money copying a process that someone else is using that might work for them. And that may be where their sweet spot's at, but that's definitely not going to be the way that I do things. I pay attention. I gather intel. utilize the best practices that I think work within what I'm trying to do, but I certainly not going to be a copycat of anybody. And I think in business, to be an entrepreneur, we almost dabbled into franchising in my Maxout business. We were going to franchise it out, and some people call themselves an entrepreneur because they own a business. And I would say that there's business owners and there's entrepreneurs. There's two different kinds of people. The people that open up a Subway aren't necessarily entrepreneurs because they're getting a known success story, and the blueprint is handed to them and they follow it. Entrepreneurs take an idea and turn it into something with the risk of the world on their shoulders and then go make it happen. And I think that's the difference. And while I never would have thought of myself as an entrepreneur 10 years ago, if I look back on my life, I sold drugs in high school. I had a term paper writing business in high school where I was writing term papers for people. I get 50 for a C, 75 for a B, 100 for an A. I had a hall pass writing business, $2 a hall pass. I had 1,000 hall passes I appropriated when I was in high school and learned how to forge signatures. So I think I was actually an entrepreneur in high school and didn't even know it. So maybe not a legitimate one, but I certainly had the desire to do things that haven't been done before, I guess I should say.
Yeah. I like that. And I think that's a great distinction to make. Our show is Rebelpreneur, and maybe that's a combination of entrepreneur and pioneer and business owner. But I like the distinction you make, and it made me think of the difference between someone who follows a map and someone who creates a map. And to create the map, it's a whole lot harder. You got to go out there, gather the intelligence, walk the land, or get the survey and create a map where no one has gone before. That's infinitely more difficult, and not everybody is cut out for that. Our time is almost gone, but before we wrap it up, Matt, is there anything that you're working on right now that you are really excited about that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, two real quick things. Number one, my company Maxout, like I said, we have a piece of technology that lets us do something. We actually have 2 new patents, and the patented technology is going to be released this summer in July is when we go public. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers have partnered with us on launching our new technology, which is pretty cool. So we're excited about that. And we're going to change a lot of lives and impact a lot of people on many different levels, from strength and conditioning at the high school, college, and pro level, but also in the neurological, neuromuscular rehab market. So we're excited about that. And then I'm writing my second book. The first book was about me and my brother and how his death impacted my life and changed my life in so many different ways, but all of which ended up making me who I am today. And the second book I'm writing about my mother, who recently was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I'm writing a book dedicating it to her that'll just started in Christmas. It'll end next Christmas, and just kind of surmising this year and the struggles of being the son of someone whose mother was everything to him, and watching the deterioration of her memory happen, and just sort of a dedication and an homage to my mom.
Very good. Very inspirational. And what a lot of strength. You just exude strength, not just in your physical development or your physical Maxout company, but mentally, emotionally, there's that strength and that comes through with what you're doing very clearly. So I wish you all the best. How can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to find out more about your products and services?
Everything can be found on my personal website, which is www.mattcubbler.com. My name, MattCubbler.com.
Perfect. That's mattcubbler.com. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners before we close?
Yeah, if everybody just sort of figures out that life is short, it's fleeting. We have a birth date and an end date, and everything we do in between there has meaning and purpose. And that if we live each day as if it were its last, and with a desire to help other people succeed, there won't be any more wars or conflict or for any other problems. If we just lived that life would be a lot simpler.
Words to live by. I've been speaking with Matt Cubbler. He is the co-founder of Maxout Strength Systems, and he is an inspirational speaker as well as the author of A Brother's Love, a Memoir. Matt, thanks so much for being on Rebelpreneur Radio today. I really appreciate it.
Ralph, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at ralphbrogden.com.